Right now, wherever you are, your body is quietly doing something to keep you at exactly 37 degrees Celsius. If it's warm, you're probably sweating a little without even noticing. Maybe you reached for a cold drink this morning, or nudged a thermostat, or just moved into the shade without thinking about it. That instinct to fight the heat is one of the oldest things about you. It's older than air conditioning. Older than cities, older than farming, older than the word for hot in any language that has ever existed. In fact, the war against heat is older than our species. Our ancestors were solving it before they were even fully human. So the question is, before fans, before ice, before a single wall had ever been built, what did ancient humans actually do when the temperature climbed and stayed there? To answer that, we have to go all the way back. And I mean back. Because the first cooling technology humans ever had wasn't a building or a tool. It was our own skin. Picture the African savannah, a couple million years ago. Brutal open grassland. The sun is directly overhead, there's almost no shade, and most animals have one strategy: do absolutely nothing until it's over. Lions sleep through the worst of it. So do most predators. The middle of the day is a dead zone. But our ancestors did something strange. They evolved to move through it. Here's how. Somewhere along the line, early humans lost most of their body hair and traded it for something almost no other large animal has: an obsession with sweating. You have somewhere between 2 and 4 million sweat glands packed into your skin. That is a genuinely absurd number. It means you can dump heat by evaporation faster and more efficiently than nearly any mammal alive. Then add standing upright. Walking on 2 legs means less of your body is roasting under the noon sun. Only your head and shoulders take the direct hit, instead of a long horizontal back. And you catch more of whatever breeze is moving above the grass. Put it together and you get a creature built to stay cool while everything else overheats. Scientists think this unlocked something wild. There's a theory called persistence hunting. The idea is that early humans could chase an antelope in the peak heat of the day not by being faster, but by refusing to stop. The antelope is quick in bursts, but it can't sweat like we can. It cools itself by panting, and panting fails when you're running flat out. So it sprints, and stops to breathe. Sprints, and stops. And the hairy sweaty upright thing just keeps coming. Until the animal literally overheats and collapses. We didn't win by beating the heat. We won by weaponizing it. Think about that. The same discomfort you feel on a hot day is the exact trait that may have put meat in our ancestors' hands. But sweat only gets you so far. Because a body has limits, and when a heatwave settles in for days, biology needs backup. That's where behavior comes in, and this is the second oldest trick in the book. Early humans became masters of timing and terrain. They learned, the way every desert culture would later learn, that you don't fight the sun at noon, you hide from it and do your living at the edges of the day. Dawn and dusk become the shift. The middle becomes rest. And they read the landscape for cold spots. Caves were the original refuge. Walk into a deep cave on a scorching day and the temperature barely moves from season to season, it sits at a steady, blessed cool because the rock around it acts like a giant thermal buffer. Riverbanks, the shade of a cliff, the north face of a hill. Our ancestors mapped the coolness of a place the way we scan a room for a plug socket. For hundreds of thousands of years, that was the whole toolkit. Sweat. Shade. Water. Timing. And here's what makes this next part so important, because this is the moment the story changes. At some point, humans stopped just finding cool places. They started building them. Go to ancient Egypt, thousands of years ago, and you find one of the first real cooling technologies in history, and it's beautifully simple. They hung wet reed mats across doorways and windows. Hot, dry desert air blows through the damp mat, the water evaporates, and the air on the other side comes out noticeably cooler. That's it. That's an air conditioner made of a puddle and a breeze. The Egyptians used the same principle for water. They stored it in porous clay pots that sweat. A tiny bit of water seeps to the outside surface, evaporates, and chills whatever's left inside. A ceramic vessel that keeps your water cold in 40-degree heat, with no ice and no electricity. People in dry regions still use versions of this today. But the real masters of the heat wave lived a little further east. And what they built should honestly be more famous than it is. In ancient Persia, engineers looked at the desert and basically declared war on it. First, they invented the windcatcher, a tall tower rising off the roof of a building, open at the top. It scoops even the faintest high breeze and funnels it down into the rooms below, pushing hot air out and pulling cool air in. A chimney, but for coolness. Some of these are thousands of years old and still work today with zero moving parts. Then they went further. They ran underground channels called canets to carry water for miles beneath the desert, staying cool in the earth the whole way. And they combined the two. A windcatcher pulling air down over flowing underground water, so the breeze arrived not just moving, but chilled. And then there's the one that sounds impossible. The Persians built giant domed structures called yakshals to store ice in a desert. They'd bring in ice during the cold nights of winter, seal it inside these massive insulated domes with walls sometimes 2 meters thick, and it would last through the blazing summer. Ice cream in the desert, roughly 2,500 years ago. Let that sink in. People who had never seen a battery, a motor, or a light bulb figured out how to have cold storage in one of the hottest places on Earth using nothing but geometry, physics, and patience. And this idea spread everywhere, because everyone was fighting the same enemy. In Mesopotamia and across the Mediterranean, people built with thick mud brick and stone walls that soak up heat slowly all day and release it at night, keeping the inside steady. They designed homes around shaded inner courtyards so there was always a cool pocket at the center. The Romans, being the Romans, went so far as to haul snow down from the mountains to chill their drinks. And all across these hot regions, cultures independently landed on the same daily rhythm. Work the cool hours, then stop and rest through the worst of the afternoon. The siesta isn't laziness. It's 10,000 years of survival wisdom dressed up as a nap. Even the clothing was a cooling machine. Loose, flowing robes trap a layer of air and let sweat evaporate against the skin. The Bedouin famously wore black robes in the desert. Which sounds insane, until you realize the dark fabric heats the air inside the robe so much that it rises and pulls a constant cooling draft up from below. Genius, hiding in plain sight. So here's the full picture. First we grew the skin, sweat glands and bare bodies to outlast the sun. Then we learned the land, caves, shade, and the cool edges of the day. Then we wet the wind in Egypt, and made air out of a damp mat. Then Persia caught the breeze in towers and kept ice in the desert. Then the whole ancient world thickened its walls, shaded its courtyards, and lay down at noon. Every one of those is the same instinct. The exact instinct that made you step into the shade this morning without a single thought. You didn't invent that move. You inherited it from 100,000 ancestors who stared down the sun and refused to just lie there and take it. The cold drink in your hand is the newest version of the oldest human idea. We do not have to accept the world as it is. We can make it a little cooler. That's kind of the whole story of being human. We got hot, and we got clever. If your brain likes going backwards like this, stick around, there are a lot more everyday habits with much older roots than you'd think.